you'd stand and follow me in the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Karen, would you call the roll, please?
Yes. So we get alphabetical order, sorry. Commissioner Angier? Here. Commissioner Humberston?
Here.
Commissioner Kalani?
Here.
Commissioner McNeil?
Here.
Commissioner Soa?
Here.
All present.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the agenda, or are there any corrections to the agenda?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions, corrections?
Question, did the one that I got in the mail, is that still what's in the agenda?
Sure. Should be.
Yes, which you got the courier the other day, yes.
No other questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Report from executive sessions on September 17th and 30th. You?
Let's see, we, it was pretty active. We discussed replacement for our CEO for Lee, and talked to some people about a search. And that was basically, we were pretty well tied up.
Okay. Next item is public comment. Is there anyone who has signed up for public comment today?
You had two that you needed to report on.
Warren's got it, and
I don't see the board, but okay. Warren, did you have a comment? Thank you.
Yes, my comment is, you guys had super long executive session, then you recessed back into another one, and I believe you had another special one. And that's all you got is one item for 4 or 5 hours worth of executive session to report out of?
I don't remember a 5-hour session.
Well, you had 2.5, and then you recessed into it, and I don't know, was that half hour, hour?
We didn't have 5 hours of session.
Okay, 4.
I guarantee it. My wife had been down here pulling me out of the meeting.
Well, the issue is that you only have one subject for that length of the executive session.
What did I say?
You talked
What did
about
I
the
say?
search committee.
Did you hear what I said?
Yeah, I did.
All right.
That's it?
Yep.
Okay. Okay.
It was very extensive.
Okay. And then I guess the second question is, the Beaver Creek issue with that spare lot, whatever became of that building that Beaver Creek built on CRW's property
What?
years ago. You know what I'm talking about, that 2-story building on the spare lot at Beaver Creek Telephone Company?
That issue was resolved over 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
Where were you then?
I was here, I don't know where I was. but-
That's not our problem.
Well, okay, well, I guess I'm talking to the president, not the secretary.
The issue was resolved about 3 years ago. There was a negotiation between this district and their respective officers, and a settlement was reached and an agreement was reached, and that was publicized back at that time.
Okay,
Okay.
all right.
Okay.
Thanks.
Sure. Any other public comment today? Mr. Moore?
You have 2 executive sessions that you should be reporting on. I think you talked about the most recent one, but there was one prior to that. That's
The 17th and
the
the 30th.
17th, yes.
So I was right.
17.
Well, I was right.
Yeah, 17th and 30th. So that's
Yeah,
what
it was
it's
the
at.
one that was at 3 o'clock before our regular meeting, and then there was the separate one on the 30th.
Yeah.
I think they both revolved around the same issue. And
Yeah, I just-
the first was interviewing multiple candidates
All right.
to do the search on our behalf. The second was to meet with the one that was selected
That's
to set
right.
the standards for that search.
I just think that the record should reflect that. so
Okay.
that you-
Basically the same subject.
Yes,
Same issue.
same subject. Okay. Any other public comment? Hearing none, we move on to the action items. The first item on the agenda today is project acceptance on the Southeast Bell Avenue Waterline Relocation Project. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any questions from any member of the board? Any comments? Adam, did you wish to make a presentation on
I
this?
can make a brief presentation if that's
Okay.
acceptable. Good evening, Commissioners. Just wanted to run over a quick check on the project with you. As you recall, a couple months ago, I think it was July, I believe, or June, I gave a brief report on the project and that we anticipated some overage. With the final quantities, we didn't really see any deviation from those numbers that I presented back then. The project was completed to our standards. Overall, it was a good project. Contractor did well and wrapped things up in September. And as you can see, the overage amount of about just under 8% was pretty much in line with what I presented to you back in June. So I've got the notice of acceptance that we'll ask the president to sign, and then there will be a final change order document that will come out as well to capture the final quantities, is the only purpose of that. So.
I did have one question. What was the original budgeted amount? If you could refresh my memory, I'd appreciate
The
that.
original budgeted amount, I believe I put it in the write-up.
I didn't see that.
Maybe I did. It was around, I want to say 7.
No, there's a final contract amount and an original contract,
Yeah.
but not a budgeted amount.
Right.
Is that what C?
Yeah, I want to say it was around 760. 7, yeah. I don't know exactly. I don't have the budget document in front of me, but it was in the high 700s. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So it came in under budget, but over what we had actually hoped because of the change order.
Yeah, the original construction contract amount, the final quantity was greater than the original construction contract, but still under our fiscally budgeted
Okay.
amount. Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
Tell me who requested the change order?
Well, the changes, and like I said, I presented this back in June. Given that the changes were for items that were unit price items, so they were not new items that had to be introduced in a formal change order per se, but they were quantities based on primarily the excavation and backfill item. So those quantities were greater than estimated. And since the dollar amount of all the changes was under 10% of the contract, then we notified the board back in June, I believe it was, as just an informational item. But again, since it was under the 10%, we were allowed to proceed under all of the rules.
So what happened, Larry, was they ran into unknown things during the excavation that were not identified during the locate process, and they had to adjust the water line up and down, which created these larger quantities of already bid items that were in the bid.
That's true, yeah.
So that's the gist of the change order.
Yep, you got it.
Carol?
If you don't mind, I just looked up the budget number. It was $783,000 was the total budget for the project.
Okay. And we came in at 738 with the changes.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Would you call the roll for the vote, please? All those in favor signify by saying aye, and those opposed say nay.
Commissioner Angier?
Aye.
Commissioner Humberston?
Aye.
Commissioner Kalani?
Aye.
Commissioner McNeil?
Aye.
Commissioner Soa?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. The next item is Resolution 06-2016, reimbursement resolution. The resolution will allow for reimbursement of qualified expenses with bonded monies that have been incurred prior to the bond being funded. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Mr. Moore.
Yes, Board, as you recall at our last board meeting, we had Mr. Robinson here, who is going to be our bonding representative. And there was some discussion about, because we were moving this project kind of ahead of our ability to get the bonds, that we were expending money now, or we would be spending money in advance of actually getting the bonds. And one of the things that we talked about at that meeting was that there's a thing called, that we would need a reimbursement resolution, so any money spent could be paid retroactively out of the bond proceeds. And so what that required then is a resolution by this body to have you approve that, and that's what this motion's all about, is to, in the event that it takes us a while before we actually receive the money, we know we're gonna be spending money, that we can get those amounts reimbursed. Now, there is a thing that I think I misinformed some of you on, is that at the top of that schedule that you had in your packet for the bonding, there was the number $25 million. That is not the amount that we were talking about bonding. What that is that this reimbursement resolution allows us to expend up to $25 million retroactively if we so choose. There's no way in heck that we're gonna spend that amount of money. And in talking with the bonding agent today, he said he just picked a number, is what happened. So that's what that $25 million is all.
I like the number though.
Wish we had all that.
We will.
So that's what it's all about.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Are there any questions from any of the board members?
Is this
Yes.
a one-time resolution for this particular bond that's coming up, or is this for any future bonds that we can be allowed to do this?
It would be a one-time resolution to expend the money up to the point that we actually got the bond.
Okay,
So when we get the bond, then this thing goes away.
okay, thank you.
You live off the bond.
Question, if we go for a second bond issue later on for the next part of the project, will this need to be done a second time?
That's kind of what I was asking.
Well, no.
Okay.
Remember that one of the things that we will be presenting to you later, okay, is the methodology of which we would be drawing down on the bond proceeds. And it has not yet been decided how we're going to do that, but I think the word that they used is either phased or staged drawdowns. Very similar to what you see happening in Lake Oswego now with their project. It's a multi-year project. Remember, we are limited. Let's say that we were to draw down $20 million. We have 3 years to expend that money. And so it is very possible that we may draw in smaller segments than that. Now, there's some premiums associated with breaking up the bonding that way, but ultimately it's still to our advantage to do it that way. So it'll be part of the overall plan, which will come back to the board, and you will have another opportunity to look at that and approve that. Okay.
Any other questions? Hearing none, would you take a roll call vote, please? Those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nay.
Commissioner Angier?
Aye.
Commissioner Humbertson?
Aye.
Commissioner Kalani?
Aye.
Commissioner McNeil?
Aye.
Commissioner Soa?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions about the consent agenda? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Informational reports. Management report. Mr. Moore.
Yes. Shelley, would you come forward?
Sure.
I'm going to kind of report on the management report a little bit out of order because we have staff, person here, Shelley, Matthews, who is our senior financial analyst. I think you've seen her on a prior occasion. And one of the things that the board had requested that staff kind of put on our front burner is to continue to look for alternative ways to find other monies that might be available out there to support a lot of our project activities. And we have fortunate enough to have Shelley on our staff. She is a professional grant writer who comes to us by way of DEQ. And so we have kind of turned her loose on what I call the money hunt and looking at state monies and the like. And so what I thought it would be helpful today is, because we had a brief agenda, is to give you an opportunity and give her an opportunity to share with you the kinds of monies that she has identified and the kinds of things that we are pursuing. So I'll stop there and let her take over.
Thank you. Good evening. So I have some promising grant opportunities to tell you about. First of all, the Oregon Water Resources Department, they have a couple grant opportunities. The first one funds feasibility studies for water conservation, reuse, and storage projects. They have $2.8 million in funding, a maximum request of $500,000, a 50% match, and the application deadline is February 1st of next year. The second one is their water supply development account, and that's for project implementation. Eligible projects include new and expanded storage and water distribution, water reuse, conservation, management, and measurement, and stream flow protection and restoration. This grant has $14 million in funding. They haven't determined the maximum amount yet. It's a new grant opportunity, and they're just kind of waiting to see what they get in before they decide what the max will be. But the representative has indicated that it would be $1 million, so it'll be significant amounts. And they have a 25% match on this one. And again, the application deadline is yet to be determined, although they've said it'll be sometime early next year. The funds for both grants will be awarded in the summer of 2016. And you do not have to start with the feasibility study. If you have a project that's ready to go right into the implementation phase, you could apply for that grant. So we met with the rep from the Oregon Water Resources Department in an informal pre-application meeting. We were there to discuss details about the grants and then just to go over some project concepts with them. We found out that this representative is actually a former water master of Clackamas County, and he is very eager to give money to organizations within this county. He really wants to work with us, and he's encouraged us to apply for this first funding cycle, and also to continue to apply in future years as they anticipate getting funds well into the future. He's told us that they're partial to collaborative, multidimensional, and phased projects, and they're referring to partnerships with other organizations, applications that would combine projects to more projects so that we could meet more criteria and have a better chance of success in getting those grant funds. We were thinking that our progress on the ORS 190 would really assist us in that effort. As for the criteria, the scoring is based on the project's ability to meet certain economic, environmental, and social cultural benefits. In other words, the more benefits we meet, the higher our scoring, and hence the reason behind the collaboration, getting other organizations like Sunrise in, and also combining their projects with ours. He's encouraged us to apply for the current funding cycle so that we can establish a foundation of cooperation with them. Bob and Adam are reviewing the backbone project list to identify potential projects for funding. This would help us to reduce the amount that we borrow. And Sunrise was also identifying potential projects and working with us on this. Our next step is to develop some comprehensive project concepts and then to schedule a pre-application meeting with them. They've actually offered to sit down with us even before we fill out the application to go over all these project proposals and help us to identify how to package them for success and optimize our chances for funding. And another opportunity I want to tell you about, a little bit further on this one. We'd like to put in a new restroom and also upgrade and expand the parking at Riverside Park. So yesterday we sent off information for a pre-application review by the State Marine Board, and that would potentially provide us with the funding to do this. They have $750,000 in funding available. The match is 20%, and we would have to maintain the facilities for 20 years. They have 3 phases to their application process. The first phase is actually passed, and in that first phase, they provided 70% of the grant funds. And in the second phase, which the applications are due January 15th of this next year, they will provide 20% of the funds, and we could potentially get in on that. It's for the smaller projects, and this would be considered smaller for them. And the third phase, they provide 10%. That's just cost increases to previously approved projects.
A question with that one from the Marine Board. So we're on the hook for maintenance for 20 years?
Correct.
So because it's in the flood inundation zone, if we lose it due to flood, are we on the hook for 100% of it?
Yeah, we are already on the hook for it.
Right, but I mean with this.
Yeah. Well, no, the grant funds is that we're committing for over this 20-year period of time that we will continue to maintain.
Right, under normal situations.
Under normal
Right.
circumstances, and so.
Yeah.
What we have found is what the 10%, we exceed that pretty much every year, so.
Right, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're in good shape.
Okay.
We get a little over $4,000 a year on a maintenance grant every year from the Oregon Marine Board, and that's to maintain the boat ramp
Yeah.
facilities. And that will continue. I mean, there's no reason to believe that that wouldn't continue. Now, we do tend to spend a little bit more than that, but not everything that we spend is related to the boat ramp. So not everything that we spend is qualifying, but we always spend enough to qualify for the full grant amount. It just went up from like $3,700 to $4,100, I believe, in the last year.
So can you use that money also to improve the parking lot for parking for trailers? And
Well, that's what
Yeah, that's what we need to
this
do.
bigger portion of the
Well,
grant
okay,
is for that
good.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're talking about upgrading and expanding it, which would include removing the asphalt, putting in new asphalt, and expanding portions of it out into the grassy area to make it larger. We've put in striping for the parking spots, both for the boat trailers and the passenger cars. And we put up new signage, that type of thing.
Yeah.
One of the things that, as you know, we also allow the Clackamas County River Patrol to use the garage storage facility down there. And part of what we're talking about is the road, the access road into the park is really a county road.
Yeah, it is.
And so we would probably be looking at asking the county to vacate that road so that we could enhance the traffic flow down there, because right now, people are, especially in the summertime, they're parking down there any way they can. And it really is not set up right currently for a lot of boat trailer activity. And so, but again, this is another one of those areas where there are monies out there, In the past, we have not pursued them as actively as we're doing now, and this is yet just another area that we're looking at. The other thing that I'm not sure Shelley's aware of, we were approached by North Clackamas School District, and what they heard through the Little League, that we were trying to figure out what to do with the restroom down there. That's really, I don't know if you've seen it, it's really a disaster. It is not up to ADA standards.
It's old.
It is just poorly maintained, and people prefer the porta potty down there that we have down there than they do using the bathroom. And it's a facility where kids are using it, you know, and parents are reluctant to use it. So when the Little League is out there during the summertime, they bring in additional porta potties, and it's kind of an embarrassment, quite frankly. And so the North Clackamas School District came to us, and we haven't heard back from them yet. But they're thinking about making the restroom, if they can get permission on the school district side, to, as a demonstration project for their shop classes. To actually come in and level that facility and rebuild it using students. That would be really great if we could pull that off. Like I said, we haven't heard back from them yet, but this is yet another example of where what we have found is the more we can increase activity in that park, because most people think the park's owned by the county, and it's really our park, the more we can keep the riffraff down. And so that's the other thing.
To that end, I think we need to check with Sheriff's Office. As long as it's county right-of-way, enforcement on the county right-of-way is simple for the Sheriff's Office.
Right.
When it becomes park property, it becomes more difficult. So find out, they run into that same problem like at the county parks. You know, the county has to have, so the Parks Department is having to contract, pay the Sheriff's Office for enforcement in the parks, whereas if it was county road right-of-way, then they don't.
Yeah,
Would the ordinance that we passed solve that problem?
We did what we did a couple years back. See, the passage of time just escapes me. This
More
board
every day.
adopted the county's park code for Riverside Park. The other thing that happens is because they store a lot of their marine equipment down there, they have a vested interest. So that when we have people camping out on the shoreline beyond the fencing, they patrol it on a pretty regular basis, plus our own security patrols it as well. And we've also gone down, I don't know if you've looked at it lately, we keep it pretty clear of vegetation so that we don't have people where there can be hidden camps and all that other kind of stuff. And we have gotten a lot of compliments. The Little League has told us that park services now about 350 kids a year. And so it's very well used. And so, and then the Little League pays for the maintenance and upkeep for the athletic bills, and so that works out.
So they mow them and all that kind of stuff.
Right, right.
I have a question. How did the water board come to own a park? I mean, where did that come from?
We have quite a bit of surplus property that we bought, and we, I see Bob has his hand up there, but we bought a lot of this land for expansion purposes for a future plant. And as to when we did it, Bob has a better idea than I do.
My understanding here, this has to do with the history. The lowlands in there before was not a park. It was rough terrain down there way back when the plant was built. Our septic tank field is down in that field.
Okay.
So because no sewer system goes out to the plant, we needed property to put the septic tank drain field in, and that's where it is. And that's how we became owners of that area.
Okay.
Now, I don't know if we bought the next piece over at one time and expanded, I don't know when that might have happened. But the waterfront, or what's it called, Water Avenue, it goes all the way down, it's always been there, and that was.
Likewise, on the backside to the east, we also own quite a bit of property there. It's kind of a nice park-like setting back there. We don't use it, but again, the county sheriff uses it for their canine training.
Oh.
And they've had canine competitions there and the like, and they also have an obstacle course there where they go and exercise their dogs. That was bought specifically for plant expansion. Plus, there's a historical right-of-way there, easement, that runs through there. I think, we're not quite sure if it's been abandoned or not, but it's down there as well.
The storm has not been abandoned.
Yeah.
It's a large storm sewer pipe that cuts through the Roberts property, through the water treatment plant site, all the way down to Water Avenue. And the county has never utilized or finished the east end of the storm. So there it sits, just a piece of pipe for quite a distance. It's just there.
And we have a large storage facility out there on the Roberts property. We rent part of that to the vets upstairs for record storage for their veterinary records. Brings us not quite $700 a month. So anywhere we can make a nickel, we
Okay, thank you.
we do that. So
I can tell you too, we purchased the land in the park property in 1962. And originally they just planned to fence off the park area, as Mr. Moore had said, to use for expansion. But people wanted access to the river and they were cutting through the fence to get to it. And to keep things safe, they decided to put the fence rather just around the treatment plant itself, and then let people go ahead and get into the park area to access the river. And then of course that led to just, we have an obligation under general landlord laws. If we allow the public in there to keep it safe and sanitary for them, and hence the park, and keeping it up to date, upgraded and so forth. And
Okay, thank you.
And the restroom project ties in when I think it was number 10 of our projects.
we do have it.
Decision packages.
Yeah, it is budgeted, but that still doesn't mean that we shouldn't look to alternative ways to get additional monies to lessen the burden on the ratepayers.
Is there anything else?
you know, I was just gonna say, if we hear back from the Marine Board that we should move forward on this, then we've let them know that we would like to utilize their free services for the design, engineering, permitting, and so forth. And that there's a lot of groundwork before you actually turn in an official application form, and that groundwork would provide us with the information we need to finish the application, you know, the funding piece of it, how much money we're asking for, the environmental reviews and things like that. So we'll just wait to see what they say. And I'm not sure that they would have enough time given their constraints to get it done so that we could apply by January 15th, but even if we can't, we've also let them know that we'd love to apply within the next biennium.
Any further questions? Dr. Soa?
I'm not sure you're the right person to ask, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Our congressional delegation has access to a lot of money in land and water funds and things like that. If we don't ask for them, they go somewhere else. Have we developed a process to make presentations to our congressional delegation about getting some money to help us build the backbone or whatever we need?
Not yet.
Have we worked with the county, Washington DC lobbying group to get them to help us?
Not yet, but that's part of our plan. Actually, the money that Matthew's talking about with the state is money that historically has been returned. And when they have funded, it has been for wastewater. And this is the first time that they're looking at potable water.
The legislature just
Yeah,
did this, right?
and so we're fortunate to have someone of their skill set because we want to be first in line, you know, in order to get that. But I've always felt that we really need to be looking at the feds as well, anywhere that it's out there. And then as Commissioner McNeil says, this really then becomes an offset to anything that we're doing. And so this is our first step, trying to get it going. The gestation period sometimes is a little bit longer, you know, just to get in the pipeline, get in the queue, and that's what we're trying to do.
Well, each year, during the Association of Oregon Counties, Washington DC meeting, they have scheduled visitations with the congressional delegation. If we could pony it up on them to get them to recommend our projects, that would help us a lot.
Yeah, and I have some connections inside the congressional delegation thing. One of the problems that we get into, as you know, as a special district, when you try to go in sometimes through the League of Oregon Cities or the Association of Oregon Cities or Counties, you kind of have to take a back seat to them, because it's like cities and counties have kind of first dibs on a lot of this money. The other thing that's happening is that the federal government is just now beginning to realize water as a critical infrastructure. They've always, when you hear them talking, I think Hugh has found that with C4, they just don't talk about water. They talk about roads, they talk about sewers, when they talk about infrastructure, but they're just now beginning to have some discussion. And quite frankly, that's where this money here is coming from. This is the first time that they've actually made it available for potable water.
So FEMA has always made water
Right.
a top priority, and so I'm glad we have somebody with a skill set. It's good.
Well, I've been in DC with those lobbying groups, and I found out that if you can get to be a member of the group, there's always an opportunity for you to talk from the back row or something, or get your congressional delegation to listen to you.
No, I agree.
You have to be pushy, in other words.
Yeah.
So look at FEMA Region 10's website. They're located in Seattle, Washington, actually, Everett. And they will have grant opportunities for water providers on that thing. And what I'm looking for is sustainability dollars to provide generation for our pump stations.
One of the things that, and these are not, it's just things that we've kind of observed. Bob and I, about, 6 years ago, they had come out with this first wave of money. And everybody said, well, this money's available, you know, so we kind of went to try to get in line, and we looked at that list, and it made you feel like that song, you know, when I was a kid called Mystery in Between, you know, and it's that, it seemed like that money went either to the Portlands of the world, or it went to the very small water districts. The people in the middle, I don't think there was anybody in the middle who got any money like us.
So that's the way it was originally, hence the reason in 2005, they changed the whole way that was done. That's why they created these urban area security initiative groups. It made it so the Portlands and the Vancouvers and the large entities could not unilaterally go after those dollars. If they wanted it, they had to share it with everybody else in that group. So the Portland UASI group is 6 counties: Clark County, Multnomah County, Washington County, Columbia County, Clackamas County, and Marion County. Okay, so whatever they do, it's collective. If they get generators for one group, everybody gets to put their application in, and they get generators for everybody that needs generators. If it's radios, it's radios. If it's response trailers, it's response trailers. It doesn't matter what it is, but everybody gets an equal share of those dollars.
Yeah,
Because the way they used to do it was just plain wrong.
Yeah, that's how we got our treatment trailer.
Yeah, exactly.
It wasn't do that way. Okay.
Another source. Two.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
So, but I thought that would just give you an update of what we've been doing. So
Thank you.
you can know what's going on. The other thing that we've done is on page 3 of the management report is after the generator project was completed, one of the things that we knew that we needed to do was to double back, because as the board will recall, the first project that we had as it related to the generator project was getting our electrical equipment up to standard. And we needed to do that in order so that it could accept the new generator. But the third phase of that was then doing the electrical safety review for things like arc flash and some of those things. And so what we've done is that we hired Mr. Gary Larkin, who is an electrical safety engineer. And he has come in and now conducted a complete evaluation of our treatment plant, our pump stations, as well as Sunrise's pump stations, and given us a report. And so staff now is in the process of reviewing that report, and then the next thing will be is to really try to begin to address some of the issues that he's identified. There's some training that needs to go on. There may be additional safety equipment that we might have to buy for some of our employees and so forth. But to just let you know that
So
we
will
have
this be retrofitting some of the pump stations to meet the new?
some of the electrical.
Yeah, the electrical and the pump station, yeah, okay.
How about this building, our headquarters, if there's some kind of major catastrophe, do we have a backup generator that?
We
will keep
do,
this
but it's
building
not
going?
we do, but it's not connected. We have in our budget, you, the board, have approved the monies for hooking that generator up. That will happen prior to the end of this calendar year. What we had done is we had began the analysis last year, where we had electrical contractor come in. Actually, we had 2 electrical contractors come in, do an analysis of this building, do a load test on this building to find out what size of a generator we needed in order to make it operate in the event that we had power issues. And as you know, we have had power issues. I think in my 7 years here, we have probably had maybe 5 that have affected this building.
2 lately.
Yeah, and so, and this is where our computer systems are. Now Sunrise's computer systems are here. So the intent is to take one of our portable generators that we've had, we will retrofit that generator, and then we will sit it out back on a pad, and so that it would automatically kick in if we had an event. The other thing that you have to do when you have these kind of generators, you need to exercise them on a regular basis to make sure that they do what they're designed to do. And so I think then, like I said, by December that will have occurred.
I got a question, one of you engineer folks. At our pump stations, we have inlet receptacles for external generator connections. On the back sides of those, is that a manual transfer switch or an automatic switch?
It's manual.
That's what I thought, okay. That's what I was afraid
We
of.
have 2 or 3 portable large generators that we transport, in power outage
But they're all
situations
manual?
to those. Yeah.
Well, maybe look at what it would take to make those automatic as we're going through those pump
Yeah.
stations.
The one that we will be putting in here will be automatic.
Yeah, right, but I'm just saying, if you're going to be doing, if you're going to touch the electrical in the pump station, then the cost to do that is pretty small.
Back to the generator for this building, The veterinary hospital next door uses a lot of this building,
Yes.
and they keep a lot of critical records here. Would that generator back them up also?
Well, what happened when the vets asked for more space in this building? What we did is, first of all, they paid for all of the remodel that it took to move us to one side of the building so that they could occupy it all. They gave us over, I think it was about $110,000. They paid for all the retrofitting to put their CAT scan and their MRI into the area that we once occupied. The other thing that we had them do, because they used to be connected to our power system, we had them split the power. So they're now operating under their own systems. They put in new transformers and the like. And so they're not connected to us. They have their own systems. We also said in order for us to rent more space to them in this building, because as you know, the floor space for office space is more expensive than it is for storage. That's where we got involved with the Roberts property. And we said, why don't you take your records, let's say very heavy, and they were overstressing the load upstairs, because they had them all upstairs. Why don't you send those out to Roberts? And so they did that, and so that gave us even additional revenue. So we, I think, pretty much maxed out the space. I think longer term, when you look at what they have planned, they have told us, and I thought they'd be under construction by now, but we haven't heard anything from them. But they're planning on expanding their facility, their hospital, even though they remodeled it, what was it, 3 or 4 years ago, Bob? Yeah, they remodeled it, but when the new company IDEX bought them out, they are going to be adding to this facility, and they're going to get into cancer therapy, chemotherapy, and some of that stuff. And they're going to then put that.
Pets.
Huh?
For pets. Okay.
That's kind of how I
Well,
feel.
what I found, Commissioner McNeil, is that you probably shouldn't get too far down that road.
I'm glad my wife's not.
Obamacare for pets, here it comes.
Well, and what they tell us is.
Here it comes. You know where it's coming from, Larry. Stand by.
But they're going to be spending about $1 million, and they will have the only radioactive whatever treatment facility for pets on the West Coast, is what they tell us.
So they're gonna do chemo and radiation.
They're going to do everything.
Oh.
And they've already then rented the building behind us, and they're doing retrofit back there. Actually, they moved their competitor, ran them out of business, quite frankly, when they put the MRI and the CAT scan in this building. They've made inquiries of us if they can get even more space in this building. And the lease that we negotiated with them when I first got here with the prior board gives them right of first refusal to buy this building. And we have a 15-year lease that's now, what, half of that, it's probably about 6 years left on it. I suspect with the amount of activity that's going in, that we see now in terms of parking has become a real problem here, because they now have a conference facility upstairs where they do quite a bit of training, and this place just really gets overloaded. I suspect in the very near future they'll be coming to us asking if we're interested in selling this building outright. I think you can kind of plan on that happening at some point in time. I have done preliminary numbers. We could do that. We could do ground leasing now. That's another big thing that's going on now, so you can maintain a revenue stream. But in any of those scenarios, you could theoretically build another administrative building down on Roberts Avenue and with frontage to, what's the street here that? Jennifer, with frontage to Jennifer, because that's where the county sewer line is, runs right down Jennifer. And that could be another revenue source for CRW. It's a long answer, but I think it's important to know that we're getting pressure in terms of, because the other thing that's happening is that the entranceway to this lot is owned by CRW. Probably, what, 80% of the parking lot is owned by CRW, maybe 90. So we allow them to use that, but we're getting to the point now where we're gonna have to put up signage and stuff, because we're in a situation where our staff, sometimes when we wanna have meetings here for our staff, it's hard for them to get in this facility. So there's a lot of road frontage here that makes this a very desirable building over time. So that's something that you guys might be confronted with down the road.
Moving on, I guess.
Okay. The board work session, we had a work session, and where we went over a lot of the intergovernmental agreements that exist within the Clackamas River Basin. There are additional ones that need to be reviewed. We weren't able to get through them all. And what we're doing is planning in future work sessions that we will begin to look at some of the other ones. That meeting lasted about an hour, as I recall, maybe just a little bit over an hour. We did meet as requested by Clackamas County Chair John Ledlow on the 28th to talk about recent drought conditions. And I don't know if we received notice from them yet as to when they're gonna have their commission work session yet, but they're supposed to get in touch with us. I do have, and I apologize for not putting it back, we did receive a copy of the report, the revised report that his assistant put together. Any of you would like to have a copy of it, I'd be more than happy to send that out, okay? We can do that, okay? I'll send them out to all.
Yes, it's scheduled for the 20th
Okay,
of October.
so October 20th, going back, we being Wade Hathorne and myself from Sunrise, to provide technical assistance to the county commissioners.
And that's your work session?
It is they have a word for it.
Well, they have policy.
Policy, there
Yes.
you go, it's a
Yeah.
policy work.
Different than a work session.
Right, right. Policy meeting, is what we can call it.
Yes, because they can take action at those meetings.
Huh?
They can take action at those meetings.
Well, if they're announced and posted, they can, so they, yeah. As you know, we talked to the bonding administrator, Mr. Robinson. We've talked about that. There is in your packet, as I indicated, a calendar of events. I know there was some interest in where we are in the process, and this packet does have an outline of the critical events that we'll be going through in securing bonding. On the last page of this document is also the team that CRW will be using in the backbone project. And that is myself, Ms. Bright, our Chief Financial Officer, Karen, the Contracts Coordinator, Bob, our Chief Engineer, and Adam will be the project engineer. We will begin meeting shortly on the project stuff. Bob is still very much engaged in the design. We also have identified, because the board has indicated that there's some urgency in this. We've gone out and identified bond counsel. That's the firm of Mesereau Shannon. What happened is that he used to practice with his father, He's now broken out, he's operating on his own. The advantage that we have with him is that he represented us in the last bond sale that we had. As you know, we have the Lewis, Young, and Robertson and Birmingham Inc., which is our bond advisor, financial advisors. And we haven't identified the underwriter yet or the trustee paying agents. Standard & Poor's will be the rating agency and Fitch Ratings. And so all that information is available on the back packet. I think I advise you that probably sometime, end of December, we're going to be traveling to San Francisco. We being Mr. George, Ms. Bright, and myself, along with the financial advisors. And what that is that kind of like when you get business loans, a lot of people think that the only thing that banks and financial folks are interested in is what your financial capability is. That's only about half of it. One of the things that it should be, Commissioner Angier,
Yes.
it should be in your, let me get you the front of it. It came to you yesterday in the packet. You wanted us to hold off on it until you got back in town. There should have been a.
Right.
Okay.
I'm sure I'll find it.
Okay. But what they want to know is, how is the organization operating? They want to talk to the management team to make sure that we have the bandwidth to manage this size of a project. And they'll want to know a little bit more about the particulars of the project. Based upon that presentation, then the rating agencies and the underwriters and the like will make a determination of what our creditworthiness is. And so what we're hoping out of this process is that we can get our old credit rating restored. Because what that does is drive down the cost of money. And you can imagine if we can pick up 0.25% on $30 million, that's significant. So,
It's actually real money.
yeah. Yes.
I asked this question before, and when the community college was done to get a new bond rating, they thought it was important to have some of the board members there to show support, and of course tell the rating agency their plans for the future. I didn't hear you say there were any board members going to San Francisco.
We talked about that, but they didn't say that it was necessary at this point. So, yeah, but we did, there was a discussion. I don't think we landed any place on that discussion.
Terry, are you interested in going? No, seriously?
Probably not.
No. Well, I think you would be a good person to go if you're interested in it.
But no, they, as these plans unfold, obviously we're gonna come back to you all and tell you what we're up to, and there'll be some more decision points in here before we get to December.
Well, with the community college, I was one of the board members that went, and the agency had a lot of questions for me and other board members.
Yeah, we used to, when I was at the lottery, we went every 6 months. We were typically looking for about 500 million at a pop, because they, as you know, at the state level, they would take all state agency requests and they would bundle them. And in that way, they would release them. So about every 6 months, we would run down and do that. So. Water resources, you heard the presentation. And there's a listing of some of the projects that we kind of identified at a pretty high level. And then we had talked a while back about those pending water permits, and we have decided that it's probably not in our best interest to continue throwing good money after bad. It's just, and so we have formally withdrawn from those permit requests. And Mr. Chairman and the rest of the board, that's the end of my report.
Thank you.
There's another question on
Sir.
You probably know that when you're getting water rights and things like that, you're considered first in line if your permit goes back far enough.
Yeah.
Are we 100% sure that the water rights and permits that we have now is going to carry this group for the next 200 years?
200 years?
I'm having trouble with that.
Yeah, that was my reaction.
That I'm not sure of, you know.
How about 20?
You know, when we look at at the 40% utilization that we're talking about, this is an exercise that we went through at the last board when we were looking at this 190. And when we were talking about how much water we were going to allow Sunrise to reserve out of our rights, that was the 7.5, and I just did a simple calculation for, at the rate that Sunrise is growing, if they were to start utilizing those permits tomorrow, it would probably be about 20, 25 years before they could use those at a minimum. We still would be holding another 10 that we would not be using. And so that really becomes another discussion when we start talking about this backbone project, you know, and what may be going on in other parts of the district. So I think we're pretty well positioned. Now, that said, I think the thing that we really have to be concerned about is really the outcome of the court case that the other water providers are involved in, because those haven't been settled yet. And you're talking about Lake Oswego alone, I think, what do they have, a 40 pending?
60.
Kinda, I think it's
So 60 total, I mean,
Yeah.
the total number is 60.
Yeah, 60. And the issue is that if the court, if they can't convince the court that that they've met all the requirements for those 60, they're gonna have to look elsewhere for that water. And my belief is just my prognosis here, is that they're gonna have to look upriver. And I think that that's probably why when they began the litigation, remember they all started out together, South Fork, NCCWC, and Sunrise and Lake Oswego. South Fork broke off from those litigations and tried to go out on their own. And why they did that, my suspicion is that with the water rights that South Fork is holding, I think there's some concern around the issue of beneficial use. And I think Commissioner Hubberston and Kalani and I, we went to a water rights presentation put on by their old attorney, and she told them that their water rights were not as secure as they thought they were.
Is that the one that we went to at South Fork?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, were you there?
Yeah.
Okay. And I think it's fair to say they were a little surprised to hear her say that. What's her name? Is Laura? I can't remember what her name was. But the other agency, I think, that would be somewhat at risk is CRW. You know, now our water rights are certified, but I think that South Fork has more to give. You know, but the big issue is going to be beneficial use, and the courts are really heading in the direction that if you have excess capacity, you just can't sit on your rights. And I think issues like the drought that we went through this year and everything else, and then also looking at some of those agreements that we were going through the other day, they have in those agreements, obviously not in the court case or in the water rights, language that says if there's a reduction, we will do it on a shared basis, an equal basis. And I think, quite frankly, people have forgotten about that. So, no, I don't think there's anything that's certain right now, because I don't think we've been down this road before. And if we look at a lot of the plans that we put together, I think a lot of them were really speculative, you know, in terms of conservation and all that other kind of stuff. I think they're taking on a different meaning now. I think we're gonna be looking at it. And the other issue that we have that I don't think anybody was prepared for is the water temperature issues. You know, it's not something that is addressed in any of the plans. So it's gonna be interesting to see how that works.
We're referring to the court case, the Water Watch.
Uh-huh.
Okay, just want to make sure.
I'm sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
Other questions?
Yeah.
Okay, the next item on our agenda, item number 4, is acknowledging the selection of the bond counsel. And this is a motion just to acknowledge that selection. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to acknowledge the selection of the firm of Mercer O'Shannon as bond counsel with Clackamas River Water. Any questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Is there any further public comment this evening?
Yeah, back in the day.
Warren? Mr. Mitchell?
Just kind of curious, that bond counsel, is that the same one that's represented you in the CRW in the past in lawsuits? That's the same company?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, you said Mercer and he said Mr. Rowe or something, so I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, we've never had a Mercer Row representing us in the lawsuits.
Early on they did.
Before my time.
The,
That's the AO.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that.
the old one, there was an older one.
I'm sorry.
There was an older one. Where
His dad,
Yeah.
maybe.
Right.
Yeah, this is the son.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay. There being no other public comment, the last thing on our agenda is commissioner reports and reimbursements. Under that, we had discussed moving our work session from the 26th of October to the 27th of October, which is a Tuesday at 6 p.m. If we wish to continue to have that work session in this month, there are several items on our outstanding board agenda item list that we could have, but I'm thinking that probably the most important one to have right now would be an emergency preparedness review for that work session. If that's acceptable on that date and time for everybody, then we can plan for it. So,
It's fine with me.
you,
What's that date again, 20?
the 27th of October, it's a Tuesday,
Yeah, that should be all right.
okay?
In the evening, right?
Yes, 6 p.m. Does that work for you?
Yeah.
Okay, Dave? Okay, then the board will meet on the 27th for a work session at 6 p.m. and the subject will be the emergency preparedness.
Oh, Don? Is that
On
gonna be-
vacation?
Is Don going to be available? Ooh,
He's on vacation. I
Through the
believe,
second.
Through the second.
who the second?
Who's that?
Don, he would have to be preparing the,
Well, we don't, I think what we have to do is come up with an agenda of things that we want to talk about. And so I know we have one.
We could have the meeting, probably would be helpful for him if we would give him a list of things we'd like him to get back to us on. I think it would be helpful for him if we did that.
Are we talking about Don legal counsel?
No, Don Butner or?
Don Butner, our coop manager.
He's our emergency manager.
Okay, thank you.
And he's leaving tomorrow.
Okay, well, will he be able to get the materials together, or will staff be able to get
I
materials together?
have no idea. I mean, in terms of.
So this is tentative then?
I think Commissioner McNeil is right, is to talk about, I suspect one of the items is radios, the communications, let me put communications.
So, what I want, I think the board needs to do some work
Right.
before Don does some work.
Right.
And so, the work session needs to be for the board to talk about direction to give to staff so that then he can work on it and at a later date report back to us with what he has been able to do.
That works.
That's fine.
That works for me.
Okay.
In that, being that today was a state emergency preparedness for major earthquake,
Yeah, we were involved in
yeah,
that.
could you talk to the board about how you guys, or what you did for that?
No, what we had is an evacuation. First, we had the internal drill.
At
for
10:15?
Yeah, for everybody to drop and cover.
Good.
And then we also had an evacuation drill throughout the facility.
Good.
The vets didn't participate in that, they chose not to. But all the staff in this building
Good.
and our operations facility participated. in
Good,
that.
great.
Anything else? We stand adjourned. Thank you.
Well, there is this.
Just what we're going on right now.